I just mentioned to you off mic, like I really enjoy your videos on YouTube. So I thought we could have a nice rip. I've spent a month cocooning with the baby, so you're the first one, first Bitcoiner that I'm again talking to. So happy to kick that off with you, man.
Well, congrats, man. First off, congratulations. That's a pretty big deal.
Thank you. Yeah.
First kid?
No, second, but a lot of years in between. So I realized that I forgot a lot of stuff. So back to diapers again. But it's amazing. I love it, and it's with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is for the kids, so we gotta have kids, man. So yeah, no, it's been really fun, and yeah, just really enjoying that, but also getting back onto this. I'm really happy. I love talking to Bitcoiners, so it's nice to get back on the recording schedule again.
So, did you take some time off of Bitcoin or were you listening to Bitcoin podcasts while you were changing diapers?
Yeah, actually listening to Bitcoin podcast. I this morning I walked for an hour, listened to a Bitcoin podcast, of course. Yeah, it just keeps on going, man. I just love hearing the conversations. I think there's also a lot happening now, with this crypto strategic reserve and all this stuff. So I like to listen to like all the opinions about the shitcoins in there and how everything's moving forward. But I think that's something that we'll touch upon. Yeah, we were just talking before we started recording about that the Bitcoin journey is pretty lonely. At least it was for me. Online, I always interacted with people about Bitcoin, but in real life it was very lonely, and I think you agreed to that. And then I asked you, like, hey, is your family into Bitcoin? And you mentioned your dad before, and then you told me, your dad spent 40 years in banking, but that you never really talked about money at home. And so I thought maybe that's a fun thread to pull on to start here.
I think that that combined with my kind of background myself, like I was a CPA. And so I went through school, I went through college, university, did my CPA program. So it was about 6.5, 7 years. I minored in economics. My dad worked at a bank for 40 years. Obviously, we spent a lot of time together talking about different things, but the subject of money never came up in our house. And I think that, going through that part of my life in terms of the education and, as they call education, but I had this really hard realization that, I thought I knew a lot about finance and money and stuff, but until I discovered Bitcoin, I knew nothing about it, like nothing. And so that was a very hard realization for me and kind of a kick in the ass to be like, okay, well, if I'm this far out to lunch here after spending this much time in it, I think that there's a lot of people who need this kind of, you know, discussion at least. And so one thing I've tried to do with my show is just kind of talk to the average person more than anybody else. I don't pretend to be an expert. I actually don't think that there are any experts in Bitcoin. But I think people kind of have to start and understand what the problem is before they can see Bitcoin as a viable solution to it. And so that's what it was for me. I didn't listen to a Bitcoin podcast and get all jazzed up on it. I listened to a podcast kind of by accident talking about history, talking about money, and then
Mm.
that kind of he led to Bitcoin, but it started with like the problem there and why Bitcoin might be the solution. So yeah, it was a crazy entry for me because coming out of school, I thought I was a big shot. I knew everything about the financial world and accounting and everything, but I knew nothing. So
Yeah. It's so interesting, right? Because I mean, so you were educated as an accountant, right? I also talked to many people that have like an economics degree, and many of them have told me like, yeah, I learned about economics, but I didn't really learn what I was calculating in. We were calculating units of money, right? But we never talked about what is money, like what are we calculating in. And I think it's the same for you with the accounting wise, right? Like, okay, what am I accounting, like how yeah, like where does it come from, what is money? And I think it's just fascinating that many people come to that realization one way or the other when they eventually get into Bitcoin. But I fully agree with you, like you have to understand that there's something going on there, that there's some sort of problem, or that you are participating in a system that you don't really understand, and that kind of like sparks some curiosity to, yeah, dive a bit deeper into that.
Yeah, and so for the first couple of years in Bitcoin, I was just like everybody. Once you kind of like think you get it, at least I'm at the point now where I still don't really fully get it. I don't know if I ever will. It's like a never-ending rabbit hole. But when you're at that point, you feel the need to want to tell everybody about it. You want to tell your friends, your family. You want to. I remember talking to a group of people, and they looked at me like I had three heads. And at the time, I was like, "Why don't you guys and girls get this? Like, this is it's so obvious to me. What am I missing here? What's the disconnect?" But I think that's what it is. You could have the best presentation ever. You could have well thought out for a year, everything in place perfectly. But if the audience isn't quite there yet, I think it's impossible for anybody to understand, because until you've taken the time and energy to learn about Bitcoin, and not just like what Bitcoin is, but like really get into Bitcoin and like the layer one network and how it all kind of works together with the difficulty adjustment, until you're kind of at that realization, it almost just sounds like it's too good to be true,
Yes.
or it's a Ponzi scheme, or it's a
Yes.
scam. And
Yes.
I think that when you're talking to other people, that's where they are. And so they
Hmm.
don't have that same kind of background knowledge that you have. And so it's just like a total disconnect with people. And it's something I'm trying to work on, in my own presentation with things, but still, people have to be at the right spot before they can even hear any information that you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. We're experimenting with live streaming this, and I can also see a chat. I think it's coming from YouTube, but people are saying your mic is a bit quiet. So
Oh,
did, I
yeah.
did want to ask you, like, hey, maybe move it closer, or
Okay.
maybe
I'll
you.
try moving it closer. See what
Okay,
happens.
cool. Okay, cool. Let's see.
Is that a little bit better?
I think that's better. That's already
Okay.
better for me. Okay.
Cool. Sorry
Well,
about that.
chat, let us know. Let us know. Yeah, I fully agree, and it's also interesting. I love what you said that. Oh, can we get more volume from your? Okay, we're trying, guys. We're
Sorry,
trying.
everybody. It's my first podcast ever here.
um, I like what you said about it seems too good to be true, and every time I hear that, when people say that, it's also something that has come back, right? Like I've now, I mean, you're going to be episode 130 something. Like I talked to over 100 people for the podcast. Um, Recurring themes are coming back, right? In people's own journey, but also how people view them or how they experience talking to their friends or their family, etc. And that kind of like being too good to be true is, for me, has really been a signal, right? After I got Bitcoin, and when I hear people say that, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because this is what fiat money does to your brain, right? Like it's kind of like fiat money is this zero sum game without you really knowing it, but you always feel that, yeah, when you win, someone loses, or um, and so that approach, I don't even think is skeptical, but it's, I don't know what the opposite of curious is, but maybe it's something like that, right? It's just dismissing something instantly, um, without studying it, but also, yeah, when you ask the question, "What is money?" Do you know what money is? You instantly know, and many people know that they have no clue. You know, and yeah, the first reaction is usually kind of like, oh yeah, the Ponzi thing. Like that people still call Bitcoin a Ponzi is just fascinating to me. I think it's self-destructive actually, because once you go down this path, for me it's been really liberating actually to learn all these things. It's been rewarding to kind of like understand that I had no clue in about the system that I was participating in.
Yeah, I think that that's where most people are right now. I think that that's where the opportunity comes in, though. Am I sounding a little bit better now, Bram?
I think so, yeah. Someone said
Okay.
better, so
Okay. Chat says better. Sorry, chat.
yeah. Oh, closer, yeah,
I
just
got the
moving closer.
microphone in here now, so maybe I'll just have. I need one of those little Wii mics like Odell has, where he's just talking. To, looks like he looks
Oh,
like a
yeah, that's
giant
very
compared to
pro.
that mic.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think that that's the opportunity. But I also think that like having a YouTube channel, we were kind of again talking about this before the show too, and is we get to see and hear where people are at, and we get to see the questions they're asking and the comments that they have. And one of the comments that somebody left the other day for me, because I was talking about something in Bitcoin and like why this happened and where it could lead to, and they call it copium. And I said, if you think, like, just take a step back here, copium, like
Yeah.
central banks are buying this asset, governments around the world are buying this asset, public companies are buying this asset. I said, any serious person is doing everything that they can to get as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. So unless you're smarter than Larry Fink and the central, is it the Czech central bank or not Poland central bank? Anyways,
No, check.
like,
Yeah, they're investigating still.
yeah, like, are you smarter than these people? Are you trying to outsmart these people? Like, probably not. So maybe you should just like take a step back, put your ego aside a little bit, put in some work, and then come back here. It just blows my mind how I mean, this is kind of what the internet has kind of unlocked, though. It gives a voice to people who don't. I don't want to say don't deserve one, but like you can't spend 0 hours on a subject and then go into YouTube comments and act like you know what we're talking about here. That'd be like me, watching a NASCAR race and then pretending going on the forums and giving my input on the engines and what the drivers are doing. Like it just doesn't make any sense. But people, for some reason, feel the need to
Yes.
defend this monetary system that we've been living in, but they
Hmm.
don't even understand that either. So there's just a huge disconnect right now. But that's just part of being 16 years into this thing. Like look at history, and it takes hundreds and thousands of years for anything to really like change. And we're 16 years into this. I think that we're doing pretty damn good right now, honestly.
I think this is a nice topic because sometimes I am very surprised, right? Like and I've shared this a lot, like but my thinking kind of goes like this. Yeah, similar to what you said, right? Like sometimes I see certain people talk about Bitcoin, like Stanley Druckenmiller or Paul Tudor Jones, or like just other Wall Street legends, Bill Miller, and I'm like, yeah, what do I know, right? Like if someone like Stanley or Paul Tudor Jones says like, yeah, Bitcoin is the fastest horse, okay, I'm just gonna take that. I'm not gonna be like, oh, what is this guy? Maybe this guy is evil or what? Like it just like that, like that stuff. It's more like he's paying attention. And Paul Tudor Jones, by the way, his biggest percentage of his portfolio is in Bitcoin right now. That's a multi-billionaire. Um, Ricardo Salinas, a Mexican billionaire, same. He's like
Yeah.
80% Bitcoin, right? So these are people that understand this better than us, have more track record than us, and they are talking about it like this. And then of course there's the Warren Buffetts of the world that call it red poison squared. Um, and yeah, you also have to take that into account, right? Like why is he saying that? But I think it's a certain way of thinking or being, yeah, curious is the word I've found to be like central to this, but just being like curious and um yeah, just pulling on little threads and seeing where you end up. Of course, what I love about what you do on YouTube is you're really drilling down, you're like unpacking a lot of stuff, right? And it won't touch everyone, just as like what I talk about on the podcast, it won't touch everyone, but I think it's just about creating these different touch points that for some people something's gonna click, right? Or gonna trigger, and they're gonna be like, huh, oh, I never thought about it like this. How does that actually work? And I go to ChatGPT or Google or whatever. And then, they continue on this path. But we cannot really orange pill other people. It's just yeah, it's kind of like this growth mindset or being open-minded, something like that.
Yeah, there's a saying in Bitcoin that everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. And I think that that's a little bit, I don't know. I don't love it. There's certain terms in Bitcoin that I don't love, like orange pilling. I don't love. It seems forced. What's another one? Normie. I don't feel like we should be disrespecting other people because we were normies at one time. But the everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve is incredibly accurate. But I still feel like there's a large segment of the population on Earth who just can't access Bitcoin yet. So it's not really fair to them. I think a better way to say it would be like Bitcoin is an ego test, and I think that's
Hmm.
absolutely what it is.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for some of these very intelligent, very wealthy people to not understand Bitcoin. That's just their ego getting in the way, and it's going to prevent a lot of future financial gains, but also like reputational gains. Like we're still at the point where this thing's undecided to most minds. But I think as we look back, there's going to be a lot of people who really look like dipshits on the internet because they're bad mouthing Bitcoin after spending 0 hours learning about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I still think we are very, very early, even after 16 years, you know, the what we just said, like, and I think about that a lot. Like, how is it possible that I figured this out? How is it possible that I figured this out before all these central bankers, before all the people whose actual job it is to understand a new money emerging in the world, right? Like that's probably core of a job of many people in finance to just pay attention, right? And as you said, it's this ego test. It's about, you know, what's the spoon that's feeding you? Like, where does that come from? And so I agree. There are many intelligent people. Um, Taleb or well, even who did we mention now? Buffett, etc. Right? They are just like, oh yeah, no, it's a Ponzi, or the pizza lady. Like, you can make infinite pizza pizza parts, or what did you say? You know, it's okay, but for me, that shows how early we are. We are so incredibly early, and um, I've asked this question to other people, but like, how many people do you think really understand Bitcoin? And I'm at like 100K, maybe in the world, And if you think about that with regards to adoption of a new technology, a money technology, then yeah, for example, I don't think we're going to hit a million this year just because it's so early, or maybe Bitcoin is actually that big that when we hit a million, we're still early. If that makes sense. Um,
I
s-
think when we hit a million, that's kind of when the fun starts. And I
yeah,
kind of have this theory that once Bitcoin hits $1 million, it becomes a penny stock, because
yeah, I
you
saw
have to
you send me
understand
that.
that when Bitcoin hits $1 million, number one, once you get past $1 million, I think something psychologically, like when we look at tickers, it's not going to be like, oh, Bitcoin's 1,100,063 dollars. Like that's way too big of a number. And up until that point, we can't really change the unit bias within Bitcoin. But at a million, that's when one sat becomes 1 cent. And so when I think that when we hit $1 million, it might happen a little bit before that, but I think that's kind of like this the at least that point where the tickers start showing 1 sat equals 1 cent. And then people will see it a lot differently. So I think that this next from 100K to a million is going to be pretty difficult for a lot of people because they just see it and they're like, well, Bitcoin's $400,000. I'm not even going to waste any time thinking about it, looking into it, anything. And I think between 100K and a million, that's where all these big entities like the governments, like the public companies, that's when they're going to be buying all this up. And unfortunately, the average person is going to miss out on a lot of that because by the time it gets to a million, when they trade a dollar um, for sats, it's going to be what $1 would be 100 sats. 1 cent equals 1 sat, I think. But that's kind of my theory. But I think when that happens, that's when people are going to be like, "Holy, this thing's only like a cent." I think that's why like all the altcoins and cryptos are so like enticing to people is because it's a completely different view when you're looking at it. When you
Hmm.
see it with something that's 100,000, you're like, "Well, I don't have $50 in the bank, so there's no chance for me in Bitcoin. I'm going to go buy 50 XRP tokens because I heard that it might triple or double, and then I might turn it into whatever." But like when 1 sat is equal to 1 cent, I think that that's when the average person is going to get re-engaged in Bitcoin and start paying more attention to it.
It's also kind of sad that it has to go like that.
I
I
know.
I agree. I think it's just very daunting if you're not really like familiar yet with Bitcoin, and you see this price of, well, today we went down again to like 85-ish K, right? But still, it's mind-boggling, basically, right? Like, this thing is $85,000 per coin. You know. Um, by the way, I love the using the term exchange rate rather than the price, right? So if you think about it, like, okay, a few years ago, one Bitcoin unit was $3,000 units. Now, one Bitcoin unit is $85,000 units. And if you look at it as an exchange rate, you then ask the question, which one do you think is growing in strength? You know, um, and that has helped me actually to get some people around that um, change in mindset, going from like in- investment to more like, hey, it's a new money, and I can actually move from this money system that I have no clue about to this money system that I can actually, verify for myself. I think that's also one of the very big selling points for Bitcoin, is that, as much as you would like to know about Bitcoin, you can actually learn about it, except who Satoshi is maybe, but the rest is just to be found on the internet, right? Like, this is an asymmetrical bet or an asymmetrical opportunity based on public information.
It's important. Like wording is important.
Hmm.
I mean, words themselves. I don't want to get too far down any sort of rabbit holes here, but like if you think about
Try it.
spelling, like
Yeah.
spelling is casting a spell with words. That's what
Yes.
spelling is. Like
Could
that's
you move
how.
the mic? Sorry. Could you move the
Oh,
mic a little
sorry.
bit? Still,
I don't know why this is giving me such issues here. I never have issues with this freaking microphone. Let me try something here. Let me try oh, it automatically. How does that sound? Is
this
that
is
better?
better. Yeah. Oh yeah, I usually do manual gain. Did it do automatic?
Well, it had me automatic here and it had it on near. So I don't know. Either I'm gonna have to
This
put
is
this like
way
here or
better.
put it, I don't know.
For
Is it
me, it's
better?
better. Chat, is it better? I don't know. There's some people
Man,
watching,
chat's
so
probably just hating me right now. I'm sorry, chat. I'm doing my
no, no,
best
no.
here.
They're okay. They're okay. It's just that you were that you were low. But yeah,
Okay.
we're yes, yes. Spelling, yeah. Just
Yeah,
like
so
television is
spelling it is essentially
television,
like,
right?
yeah, it's casting words with or casting a spell with your words. So absolutely, like the wording and the terminology we use within Bitcoin is incredibly important when we're trying to grow this thing and push this thing forward. So yeah, I think that's a perfect example of like helping people understand it. It's kind of what I try to do every day on my show is like make things more relatable to what we know because this
Hmm.
Bitcoin thing exists kind of in a world that we don't know and we're heading into that world. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. So what we need to do is kind of connect the dots for things that we kind of understand now. And I think
Yeah.
a perfect example of that is like 100 years ago when we moved from the horse and buggy to the automobile. Like I don't know if this is true. This is what I've seen. I can't verify this, but they actually used to put horses' heads on vehicles because that's how humans would associate with things like moving around
Dude,
in transportation.
there were people walking in front of the car.
Oh, there you go. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. Like people
Yeah,
need
yeah.
something like from the old world to,
Hmm.
apply to what's happening here. So I think that it's absolutely vital. Did you say something about the television too? Is that
Yeah, I
part of it?
said television is television. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, could you just imagine how different the world would be if we were actually like taught the truth and like able to access things that are out there instead of just being lied to and hidden everything from? Like, could you imagine how different our lives would be right now?
But I think well, we can take this direction because I'm sensing this, but I think what Bitcoin taught me that um oh, there's some comments that the sound is way better.
Okay, sorry
Um
everybody.
no, no, no worries, no worries, no worries. I told them we're experimenting. I have no clue what we're doing. We just push the live button. Um I think what Bitcoin has shown me is that, to go back to what I just said about the principle of the fact that you can verify everything for yourself and that everything around Bitcoin is public information. It really forced me, and it took me a lot of years and shitcoining and buying at 300 and selling at 4,000 and then up and down with interest and attention, that this Bitcoin thing is such a paradigm shift in terms of this transparency and verifiability, and it's perfectly engineered money. And once you get there and you realize that everything you've been told about money was wrong, meant to make you a subject rather than an actor in this financial system, and or you realize that no one ever told you about money, just like you mentioned, in your CPA education, or your father working at a bank for 40 years, you never talked about money at home. Why is that? Because money is And of course, I see that now, but before I didn't. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
just technology to exchange value, right? It's
yes.
basically the most important thing, most probably the most important technology to exist for people. Um, to exchange value over a certain distance that's bigger than, where than where bartering is still valuable in, a little community. Because doing that, like expanding and trading with people and building and communicating over longer distances, is actually what created civilizations eventually. So if I'm being lied to about the most important technology or tool that people can use to communicate with each other, yeah, what else is not true? And lately I've been really thinking, like, you need some sort of red pill before you can be orange pilled. Because and that's also, I think, why that ties back to the ego test, by the way. Yeah, you have to be comfortable with that uncomfortable realization to go further along this path of studying, let's say.
Yeah, and I think that that's why, I give baby boomers I cut them a lot of slack. I know they take a lot of shit for kind of, the mess we've been left with here. But I think that baby boomers themselves have, when they were growing up and, up until they were probably 50, 55 years old, they had 55 years of like getting information from three sources: the TV, the radio, and the newspaper. That's it. So it's not like they just chose to watch CBC or CNBC or whatever. That's literally all that there was until the internet came out and decentralized information. They didn't have access to any of that. So even my dad, it's not that he was hiding information from me. He didn't know himself, which is insane. A guy worked at a bank for 40 years and he didn't even understand the product that they were selling there. It's all part of the scheme. And that's the scheme that's led us to this point. And, if it wasn't such a big scheme, I don't think Bitcoin would be such a big idea. But it's like, it's big. And you mentioned being able to send value to anybody else in the world. I kind of gave an example recently about um, a barber, and somebody said that they're having a trouble orange pilling their barber. And I went through this exact same thing. The nice thing about barbers and hairdressers is that they talk to a lot of people. You're stuck in a chair, somebody's cutting your hair, so you have like it's the only time of your day where you get to have like a decent conversation with somebody that isn't just like, hey, how's pretty cold out here today, whatever, just passing by. So what I explained to her was that, hairdressers, waitresses, waiters, anybody in service, they love cash. Why? And it's not that they love like the looks of it or the feel of it or anything. They love the fact that they can receive it without anybody knowing that they received it. And I said, if you're using Bitcoin properly, you can actually do the exact same thing. If I had Bitcoin in a Lightning wallet and you set up a Lightning wallet yourself, if you downloaded it, you don't have to put in your name, you don't have to put in your email, your phone number, anything. I can send you Bitcoin right now. Nobody knows that that transaction happened, which is a pretty big idea. So I said, like, I mean, look at the white paper. It says peer-to-peer electronic cash. Cash. That's a big part of it.
Hmm.
And so when you think about that, it's like, okay, well, everybody loves cash, but what if we had something that's like much better than cash that nobody could print and you could send to anybody in the world? You don't have to be in the same vicinity of them or in the
Yeah,
same room. You can send it to anybody in the world for a product or a service. Like that's a huge thing.
yeah. I think it's nice to like zoom in on this, because I think a lot of people are very rigid with the peer-to-peer electronic cash, you know, definition. Um, Saylor uses digital capital, which I think is a better term because that ties into what you said, right? Um, Cash is, I like that, money can be a currency and can be capital, right? Um, but the store of value aspect is very important, I think, because it can be a currency, right? We can be able to exchange that, you know, anonymously. I don't have to know you. I can just send it to your wallet, etc. Like, we can be able to exchange it as a currency. But if it's not a store of value at the same time, then I still need to find something else to store the value in, right? And I
Yes.
think what is difficult with Bitcoin is to understand that it's everything in one and better. It's like all the properties of money, but it's also, well, like Sailor says, Manhattan in cyberspace. It's also that, right? So it's everything that is money plus the absolute scarcity makes it, well, I like the capital part, but I wonder what you think, because people are like, oh no, Bitcoin lost its original vision, etc. But and it's slow, blah blah. Well, I can send you Bitcoin right now and it works, So it's that's BS. I think the fact that it's actually a superior store of value to any store of value in the world, it is actually a great addition. It's a great additional discovery or something. I don't even know how to explain that or like to define that, but I think it actually adds to that. And then people say like, well, you know, am I ever going to buy a cup of coffee with it? I honestly think it doesn't really matter, because eventually you cannot force that adoption. You cannot force the currency adoption. The fact that it is possible right now today already makes it this peer-to-peer electronic cash, and it is a currency and it is a store of value at the same time. I personally think that the store of value characteristic is, um, the problem that that solves is way more prevalent right now, as in people cannot save. So the saving uh, use case of fiat money is dead. So if that is a problem that we can help people understand and show them that they can save in an absolute finite asset, basically absolutely verifiable finite asset, I have to add, then that could be, their path towards Bitcoin eventually, and help them secure their future. And if they eventually, save in Bitcoin and they want to buy a house, they want to buy my house, and I want to receive Bitcoin, then they can use it as the peer-to-peer electronic cash that it is.
I think, I mean, you probably saw me here reacting to all that, but I just get so giddy when we talk about this stuff because it's just so obvious. When you have an
Yeah,
idea
but
like
it's,
this, like
yeah,
it
sorry to
is a
interrupt,
very
but it's fiat mind to start like doubting it and being so rigid and blah. Yes, it is too, it sounds too good to be true, but it's all these things. Sorry.
no, you're absolutely right, and it's like it's a very big idea, and that's the whole point of this thing. That's why people who talk about Bitcoin, people who learn about Bitcoin, the more time you spend in Bitcoin, the more excited you get and the more people you want to tell about it because it just makes so much sense. And I love to think about Bitcoin as a perfect battery, because essentially what people do every day is they add value to the world. Maybe they're working for somebody else, maybe they have their own business, but whatever you're doing, you're adding value to the world, and you get something in return for that, a currency of something, dollars, Bitcoin, anything. But Bitcoin to me is the best battery, which is essentially a way to look at a store of value. People, their minds sometimes shut off when they don't necessarily understand what you're talking about there. But when you say battery, like when you think about an Amazon battery, you can buy 500 of them for $50. They serve its purpose. You put some energy into it, and eventually they die though pretty quickly. They're very poor batteries. But when you think about Bitcoin, it's like the best battery that you could ever manufacture, because all the energy that you put into that thing, it's going to stay there for 100 years, for 500 years, for 1,000 years, unless you actually use some of it. Like if you want to spend some of it to buy a house or to buy a coffee or whatever, like obviously it's going to, drain a little bit there. But if you put it into this, if you put your time and energy into Bitcoin and you don't do anything with it, it has no leaks. That's what makes it such a great store of value. It doesn't have any leaks. You don't
Hmm.
have to pay property tax on it. You don't have to pay an annual fee to store it. You don't have to pay anything. You put it there, you protect it, and you open that thing up in 50 years from now, you're going to have the exact same amount. It has zero leaks to it, which makes the best store of value. That's exactly what you want. You compare that to gold. You want to store a bunch of gold, you got to pay storage costs every year, which eventually eats into your gains there. You want to buy real estate or an Airbnb or whatever, you pay property tax, you pay insurance, you pay the maintenance, a new roof. All of those things eat into your capital there. Bitcoin has no leaks. It's the perfect battery, perfect store of value.
Yeah. Yeah, two thoughts there. What I like is the visualization that has worked for me. I don't know why, but it's worked for me. I see it as like a 3D cube. There's also I once shared this picture also. It's somewhere on my Twitter where maybe you saw that there's like this green little triangle, which is Bitcoin. And then you have like an upside down triangle, like an orange triangle, which is like
Yeah.
fiat money or something, you know, and all the value stored in fiat money or, all these other assets eventually will go into Bitcoin. Why? Because it's verifiably superior. And so that is what takes a lot of time, probably generations. I hope we see it in our life. But once people really understand, that's also why I think we shouldn't stop talking about Bitcoin in that sense. Once people understand that it's verifiably superior, and not because I say so or you say so, but because people can individually verify that, they're going to choose that over, yeah, buying another Airbnb or some gold or whatever. Um, so that's one. So it's going there. People are going to go there. So if you look at it as like this 3D cube, the cube has one size, and it's not going to be bigger, it's not going to be smaller, it's just like a fixed cube in, well, cyberspace basically. And because, and in that cube, like, all the bitcoins fly around basically, like all the economic energy stored in Bitcoin can fly around, but it never goes outside of this cube basically. And the more and more people that are going to understand and verify for themselves that Bitcoin is a superior store value asset and a superior money, they will store more of their economic energy in this cube. And that's why the price, or well, rather the exchange rate, will go up. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. It's like this cube, and around this cube, there's all this stuff that can, it's like a blob around it, right? That can basically go anywhere. Because you could have had like real estate there in LA where all the fires were, right? That would have been part of the blob, and then it burned down, and then it's gone, right? Or whatever it is that you store economic energy in. And I love that about Bitcoin, because eventually it's just text. It's just letters and numbers, and it cannot be destroyed in that sense. Like, we are there in this stage of the network that, yeah, it just cannot be destroyed. As long as it stays decentralized and secure, this thing will live forever. And the letters and numbers can basically be stored anywhere, in any form or shape, or encoded, whatever. So that, yeah, that's just a fascinating thought for me. It's crazy that it's like physical and not at the same time also. How do you think about that?
Well, I mean, just going off of that, like in the last 5 minutes here, we've talked about how Bitcoin's the best, like monetary medium of exchange. Bitcoin's the best in that. Bitcoin's the best store of value. And Bitcoin is also something that, as more and more, when I think back to my economics class, the one thing that I do remember is the supply and demand aspect of this. And so it's a finite, verifiable asset. It just is better than anything else that exists in every department, which is really hard to like. That's why for me, I think when I talk to people, I'm like, so excited, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about, man?" But
You
like
sound
the
like a
cool
snake
thing about,
oil salesman.
yeah, exactly. Because I'm so excited. I'm so happy that this thing exists. But when you think about like the supply and demand aspect of it, like thinking back to economics, like I don't think we fully appreciate yet how few Bitcoin actually exist right now. And I don't think we will get to that point of like understanding absolute scarcity until we can actually see who's holding what. And Bitcoin, to me, it provides the perfect amount of transparency for the people who need it the most, like governments. Like, imagine if we could just see the money coming into the US government or the Canadian government or whichever government. If we could see the money coming in, the money going out, if citizens could verify that themselves and audit that themselves, that changes everything. Like at the very deep level, it changes everything from there. So you have transparency for the people who need it the most, like governments, public companies, big entities, but it also allows for a privacy for the people who want privacy. Where if you're using Lightning or Liquid or eCash, you can move this thing around without anybody knowing that you're moving it around. So it's like the perfect people's money. That's what it is to me. It's money for the people. And I think that, you could point to absolutely any issue that we have in our society. It all stems from the fact that a small group of people have the ability to print money. And you can't print this thing either. So it's a better medium of exchange. It's a better store of value. You can verify it. The list just goes on and on and on. And I'm quite convinced that if you actually just took the average person and you showed them even dollars, like just started like the very basic level, but all the characteristics of a fiat dollar and then all the characteristics of Bitcoin, but you didn't put dollars and you didn't put Bitcoin on there, I would say that like 99 to 100% of people would choose the one with Bitcoin's characteristics. It just makes
Mm-hmm.
so much sense.
Yeah.
But because Bitcoin carries around this real negative connotation from the media, from the governments, from the central banks, the people who are threatened by it, people don't even give it a second look anymore. They just like, oh, Bitcoin, Ponzi.
Yeah.
So it's
Did you
just a matter
watch
of
that?
time till people figure it out. And I think that that's the opportunity that we have now is that we have, and it's probably going to be 5, 10 years before most people figure it out. And during that time, I think we just need to accumulate and really just appreciate how valuable each single scarce sat really is.
Yeah, I agree. Did you watch that video? What's the problem by Joe Bryan?
I listened, actually. He did an interview with somebody else, and I actually didn't watch it yet, but he did a very good job of explaining like the story that he told and how it all,
Mm-hmm.
like the two different options for people. Is that kind of what you were getting at
Yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because he doesn't mention Bitcoin until the end, actually, and so he talks about the different characteristics of hard and soft money, and it's packaged in the story. So for anyone listening, Google or search on YouTube, what's the problem? I think there's also something about Bitcoin in the title. I think he should actually remove that. He shouldn't mention Bitcoin in the title.
Oh,
Or
I didn't
like,
know it had Bitcoin in the title.
yeah, it's like, what's the problem? Something like why we all need Bitcoin. um Maybe it could be something like, what's the problem with money that you don't know, or something. I don't know, but like, I think, yeah, like you said, even mentioning Bitcoin will throw people off, whereas this is probably top 3 explainer video I've seen in 10 years. But yeah, like we talked about before, the ego will keep people away from it. Like, it's also something I wanted to ask you. Are there any like misunderstandings that the average person has about Bitcoin um that you would like to tackle, or like, and maybe also like, why do you think like that specific misconception is so persistent? What do you think of when I say that?
I think that the biggest misconception that people have in Bitcoin is that they buy it and then they'll never be able to spend it or sell it.
Mm,
And I really don't know where that comes from, but I've talked to countless people, and even my dad. Speaking of my dad, he told me a story because like he's my biggest advocate, I think, in life. He knows I'm a Bitcoiner. He doesn't really understand Bitcoin, but he's like talking about it to his friends and stuff, and like trying to pump Bitcoin. So he's having this conversation in the dressing room at hockey a couple weeks ago, and the guy's like, Bitcoin sounds great. Like you can't really argue its performance in the past, but like the main problem with it is that you can't spend it, you can't sell it. And I don't think that he's alone. Like again, I know a lot of people I've talked to in real life. One guy, this is this is funny, but it just goes to show like how far you know away we are from this becoming a thing. But he thought that Bitcoins were actually mined from the ground. Like when people mine Bitcoin,
yeah.
they actually found Bitcoins out of the ground. This wasn't that long ago.
Whoa.
But anyways, I think that people see it as more of like a speculative investment. But to me, when we go back to like form of capital, medium of exchange, like I really think that every bank on earth eventually here will want Bitcoin more than anything else. Like that's what they're going to be holding. And I think they're going to give preferred interest rates to people who hold their Bitcoin there. And the reason for that, kind of tying this back to the misconception, because Bitcoin is the most liquid asset that exists right now. Like it's open 24/7, 365 days a year. If you need cash, if you need like to pay for something, you can sell your Bitcoin in 5 minutes. And if we think about like Bitcoin compared to land or real estate or things that people have used for collateral in the past, think about the time it takes to sell a chunk of land or a building or a house. You need to
Hmm.
get lawyers involved. You need to get the banks involved. You need to get a valuation for it. You need to
Yeah,
find a
exactly.
local buyer. Whereas with Bitcoin, this thing is extremely liquid to a worldwide market. You want to sell that thing, you could do it tomorrow. And that's why I think that I think you had an interview on your channel a little while ago with a guy talking about lending against your Bitcoin. But like, think about that from the bank's perspective. If I'm going to get a loan from the bank and I have an option between land or Bitcoin, if I stop making the payments on my loan and the bank has to sell like a chunk of my land or find a buyer for that land, that could take 6 months, a year. If I stop making my loan payments and I'm using Bitcoin as collateral, they could sell Bitcoin that day and pay for
Mm-hmm.
my loan payment. Like,
Yeah.
again, just people don't
Do
get it. And I don't know what the
yeah.
disconnect there is. I think that there's been like a 16-year negative marketing press. I mean, it's obvious why. It's a threat to the system. So the system's fighting it. And so
Yeah.
all it does is just throw FUD around and people just kind of clings to them.
Yeah. Two thoughts there. Also, what has helped me in my thinking is, do you know how many ideas get released on the internet every day? Like millions, right? Like maybe even
Oh,
billions of
billions.
ideas
Yeah.
every day, right? What's this stat about YouTube that um, every day so much hundreds of years or something of video content get uploaded? You know what I mean? Like, so there's so many ideas on the internet. There's so many people, dude. There's even people that have like profound scientific discoveries in their backyard, and they're trying to get people to have attention. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
there's so much information on the internet. There's so much information that just never gets out there, that's just obscure on certain forums or in little discussions, and that just never sees the light of day. um and then we have this Bitcoin thing, this random idea that was released on a random internet forum, with some geeks, with some crazy, cypherpunk anarchist geeks, you know. And that idea still exists. Do you know how big that signal is? Like, that's at one point I realized that, like, it still exists. And there's now press conferences where central bank directors, like, a few weeks ago was, someone asked Christine Lagarde of the ECB something about Bitcoin after the Czech central bank guy was like researching it. Like, they're talking about it. It's a thing. Like, it's a thing, you know. And if it's your job to have an eye on emerging money in the world, and you see that this is a thing and you really study it, then it's undeniable, right? If you're still denying it, then either you're malicious or your ego's in the way. You're an yeah. Well, it's one of the two. Um, and so the fact that thing, this idea still permeates, right? And we are talking about it, and more people are talking about it. There's a conversation every day. It's trending on Twitter every day, right? Like, it's a thing, and it's not going away. That means it has value. But I think one important thing, and I wonder what you think about this, is that we are living through this, like, this monetization of Bitcoin, right? And like I said, like, this is a asymmetric opportunity based on public information. Not everyone is doing something with that information, or searching and verifying this information. But because we live in such a quick information age, everything feels as if it's a fleeting thing, right? And when something as profound as Bitcoin comes along, a superior money, a better money, the best money to ever exist, right? It's easy to dismiss that, one, but two, also to have very high expectations of, like, the speed at which things change and happen, I'd say. So I do think that the technology information age helps to accelerate Bitcoin's adoption on one end. But on the other end, I also think that the anti-sound, right, the FUD, etc., is also amplified more because of the same reason, right? And so I'm thinking about where I wanted to go, but like the profoundness of what this is, of what we're living through, I think is not clear to many people, because it is such a there's a fight going on. Does this make
Yes.
sense? I know I'm rambling, but that's, I think, my point. It's like, it's a fight, and once you see it's a fight, you know that this Bitcoin thing is really a thing.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. I could kind of tell where you're going with that, and I completely agree. Because we've been whether people want to admit it or not, like we're in a war right now. I think we've been in a war for quite a while in terms of like information. That's what whoever's like in charge at that time, that's what they do is information wars. And the I think the sad thing for a lot of people, and you kind of mentioned that, yes, like having this platform where you and I can talk about Bitcoin, and it's like it helps people feel a little bit less lonely, like that they're a little bit less crazy. The people come here, but it's like a very, very small percentage of people. And I think that the people who haven't spent any sort of time actually themselves reading a book or listening to a Bitcoiner who gets it, they just kind of take in all this secondhand information. They don't really understand it, but that's the only thing that they have in terms of like things to go off of. And so whenever it comes up in a topic or a conversation, even though they haven't spent any time, they just have these things that they've heard from the TV or from their favorite YouTuber or whatever. And that's kind of the only thing that they have to go off of, which is kind of sad. And I think the other thing there for me is that a lot of people just have to wait for like this announcement. Like having a
Mhm.
daily show and seeing people in the chat every day in the chat asking questions and talking about the current events, and people are asking like, what about this SBR? When is this going to happen? When is this going to happen? When is China going to announce that they're buying Bitcoin? It's like people have to understand that by the time news reaches people like me and you and whoever's listening to this, it was done 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so people can't wait for like the official announcement of anything, because if you're always waiting for that, you're always going to be behind everything.
Mhm.
You have to be able to think critically, connect dots, take in information, verify what's right and what probably isn't right, and then just kind of form your own conclusions and go with that. Because everybody who's waiting for these official announcements, they're going to be going through the same door at the same time. And we know what happens when people try to squeeze through the same door. So, logic, common sense, critical thinking, I think is very much lacking. That's the opportunity here. But I think that that's what we have to start focusing on for kids more so, is like teaching kids how to critically think and connect dots on their own and take different touch points. And like, could this be, I don't know, what's the percentage of it? But like, don't wait for an official announcement on anything. Just kind of like take in information, verify it, and then act on it yourself. Don't wait for anything.
Mhm. Well, this is also why I've talked a lot about the spiritual part of like the Bitcoin journey is exactly this. It's like fucking trust yourself. Like you can trust
Exactly.
yourself. You can trust yourself. But this this hodling, right? Staying, it's like it's not conviction. It's not. I think conviction is the wrong word. I don't know if there's a better word. Maybe people in the chat have a better word, because conviction sounds like it came from someone else telling me that I should be, have conviction of this thing. But no, it comes from an understanding of my own study. Like I orange pilled myself, you orange pilled yourself, other people orange pilled themselves, right? It's just okay. This was my study. I put all these things next to each other, right?
Yes.
And you know, just dissected that information, realized that everything I was ever told about money is a lie. Overcoming that disappointment, right? Like for me, that was a big shocker. Just realizing that, right? And getting to that point where I was just like, yeah, I can actually trust myself. And if I listen to these Wall Street legends, some Wall Street legends, where I think about, they have like 30, 40 years on me in terms of, you know, g- being in finance, etc. And then them here, hearing them talk about Bitcoin, also taking some sort of risk in their little world, right? Just being the crazy guy that talks about Bitcoin.
Yes.
Those have always been like little signals for me that I was like, yeah, I can actually trust myself. But the hodling part and going through, well, now we're at 85 again, and 2 weeks ago we were at 108, and now I thought, okay, we're going to the 150, and now we're at the 85. I after 10 years I still feel that. So it's a continuous challenge of answering the question, can I still trust myself? Can I still trust myself? Yes. Did anything fundamentally change about Bitcoin? No. Okay, so then I can just stick
Yes.
to the same understanding that I had before. Yeah, people are sharing in the chat cocksureness, no, confidence. Yeah, okay, but the confidence, so I agree, the word is confidence, but it's more, yeah, I think
Well,
confidence is probably a good word. Yeah.
Bram, I think you just said it. I think what you're looking for is like understanding.
Hmm.
That's kind of the word that I was thinking of when you were talking through that, and then you kind of mentioned at the end, it's an understanding. And if you think about all the different steps you went through to get to where you are right now, in terms of like understanding money, in terms of putting your ego aside, in terms of actually doing the work, in terms of like there's different types of Bitcoiners, I think, at different levels. But you have to keep in mind that most people aren't even at like the first step here. So as you go through each one of those steps, your understanding of Bitcoin grows, and I think the understanding is a very important part of it. Um, like that's why I say like no, there are no experts in Bitcoin, but I think there are a lot of people within Bitcoin who really get this thing
Mm.
and understand it. Because it's one thing to say something like, you know, infinity divided by 21 million. It's one thing to like say that and put it on a t-shirt or put it on a hat. But when you actually get to the point of like the understanding that yes, 2 billion houses divided by 21 million, or X amount of ounces of gold divided by 21 million, or X amount of acres of land divided by 21 million, and everything's going to be repriced by the asset. And you look at that objectively, not like based on YouTube comments or YouTube people, like
Mm.
this thing could be 1,000x bigger than the most bullish Bitcoiner that exists right now.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I think this is one of the hardest things still for me is like understanding how big that is, what you just said. Right? So yes, conceptually I think I'm there, because there is nothing that is as scarce as Bitcoin, verifiably as scarce as Bitcoin, that can serve as this store of value asset or tool to exchange value, currency, etc. What we talked about, right? So that's why it's superior money. But what does that actually mean? What does it mean if the children that grow up now grow up in a world where Bitcoin exists, where Bitcoin is the actual measuring stick for everything that people deem as valuable, having value? Yeah, then the hurdle rate becomes Bitcoin. I find that a really interesting thought, actually. And that is when we will move more towards this abundance, what that Jeff Booth and talks about a lot. Because if Bitcoin is the hurdle rate and enough people understand that it's the hurdle rate, all the bullshit will be gone. All the bullshit pricing of homes, of land, all the bullshit, stupid plastic products from China, like all that stuff will disappear. And people will become way, way more conscious about what they're spending, not only their time and energy on, but also their Bitcoin, basically. And that is a thought that I love, and I hope we can see that in our lifetime. I don't know, but I think that could actually go pretty quick in that sense, because it's also one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I saw a video of you where you talked about like mainstream adoption, and that a lot of people are saying like, oh, that's important, etc. You said, not really. So I wanted to ask you like, how do you view adoption? How do you look at it? And I would add to that, like how I look at it is, I don't think we need to like cross the entire chasm, in terms of adoption, etc. Because at one point it will become so clear that if you have Bitcoin, you are better off in many different ways, and other people will then want that. Other countries want that. Other uh, corporations want that, and then we just go. That's kind of how I see it. It's kind of, yeah, what Safe Dynamus talks about with the gunpowder. Like once you realize that this is a thing that's not going away and I need to have it, then it becomes you know yeah, mandatory to own it, basically.
Yeah, I absolutely love that analogy, the gunpowder one. I've heard Sailor talk about that too. And I think that that's, kind of with the recent news that has come out here in terms of like the US strategic reserve and what's being added to that, XRP, Cardano, Solana, Ethereum, all Bitcoiners are pissed. And I'm like, there's a big difference here. And kind of what you were talking about there is like Bitcoin isn't an option. It's absolutely mandatory for humans to evolve here. And it doesn't really matter what politicians in place. It doesn't matter what government or what laws are in place. Bitcoin's going to exist and Bitcoin's going to keep going. Tick, you know, tick, tick, tick. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't need anybody else. But if you look at XRP and you look at Solana and you look at these other ones, Cardano, they're all completely reliant on like announcements and being included in a reserve. They're two totally different things here. So Bitcoin, I think, is going to happen, and the only thing that's going to change is like how fast. And I think that the baby boomers actually are going to play a big role in that because they're holding a lot of the assets that I think people use as store of value right now, in terms of like their houses, in terms of gold, other real estate assets. So when you think about as the baby boomers kind of progress and they start to pass on some of their assets to their kids, which is us, millennials, Gen X, do you think that we're going to keep gold or do you think we're going to buy Bitcoin with that? So like the baby boomers can be kind of resistant to this as they want to, but I think there's going to come a point where regardless of what they do or what they think about it, their kids are going to be buying Bitcoin. And that's probably within the next like 15, 20 years. All of this capital is going to flow into Bitcoin. And I don't know. The fact that it's scarce and nobody can create more of it is mind blowing. So yeah, I mean, adoption, it's gonna. I think we're gonna keep ticking along here. Some of the strategic reserves might help. It might not. I think that countries, people, everybody's going to kind of see the difference between Bitcoin and everything else over time. Plus, you factor in then that the AI and everybody who's going to be replacing humans here in the next couple of years, they're going to be only accepting Bitcoin. So that's going to be like a forced adoption. If you want to leverage your business, if you want to participate in this new economy, you're not going to have a choice. And I think anybody who's holding Bitcoin and Sats right now, like you're not just storing your time and energy, you're buying incredible amounts of leverage for the future with whatever you want to do with that. But you're going to have the ability to do things with the Sats today, this unthinkable amounts. And it's all leverage. I think that that's how I look at buying Bitcoin today is you're buying leverage for the future. You're going to be able to hire this AI agent who's going to be able to hire 20 other AI agents and kind of like give you the afternoon off. And you're going to be able to hire the best people because the best people are going to want the best money. And you're going to be able to buy the best equipment because your purchasing power has gone up 10, 20x in the last couple of years, while everybody else is just kind of stuck behind there, you know, with their feet in the sand.
What do you think about this thought that, if you save in fiat money, you're actually diluting yourself towards the future, right? If you take, um, I think many people talk about you should get to one Bitcoin, right? But one Bitcoin, I think is already out of reach for many people, unfortunately. But if you have, let's say, point one Bitcoin, even at some point in the future, point one Bitcoin will be the block reward or something around that, right? So if you have point one Bitcoin now, let's say I would love to Google it quickly. I'm not going to do it, but let's say in 50 years, well, probably close to that, point one Bitcoin could be, somewhat of the block reward. The amount of capital needed, the amount of energy needed to get that point one mined is going to be the base valuation of that point one that you can get now for, let's say, 10K now. That idea is so mind-blowing that you can actually, increase the value of your current money towards the future, instead of, if you would hold that 10K today in cash, in dollars, whatever, it would be the base towards the future. It's completely opposed to the current money system. And that idea, the fact that you can actually send value towards the future, right? There's people that have these experiments with time locked addresses and stuff like that. That idea is fascinating, because if you have kids right now and you buy zero point 0.1 Bitcoin for your kid and you send it 18 years in the future and you lock it and they can only open it in 18 years, or you give them the seed words in 18 years, maybe that's even their retirement. Like that idea is so mind-blowing, because the fiat money system is mathematically assured to debase, right? Like, there's no other It either blows up and something else comes along, right? Or you're debased until infinity, basically. And if you go back to that idea of this cube in cyberspace that, has the same size always, 21 million, right? Or, trending towards the 21 million. It just makes so much sense that all that value is going to be transported into that thing, and that's only going to, in that value is increasing towards the future. Like, just while you were talking, I had to think about that. It's just that is so mind blowing for me. And then you can do that right now, so you don't have to wait for that permission that you talked about, right? Because that permission comes from other people that haven't studied this thing, what? So what are you waiting for? Like, you don't need other people to tell you this. All the information is out there.
Yeah, and I don't think that people even need to like get crazy and put a time lock on it. Like one thing that I've actually done in my own life is, I the way I got into Bitcoin, the reason I started my channel is kind of like with this very long-term lens with the 88 Sats project. And maybe we can touch on that in just a sec, but like what I'm getting at here is like the majority of people look at this thing as like a get rich quick, buy it this month, sell it next month kind of thing. And what I've been trying to do along the way is like tell people, no, this isn't like that at all. It's actually completely different than anything we've ever known before. And so I put like one of the open dimes from Cold Card or CoinKite. I put like not even point one of a Bitcoin. I put like 100,000 sats on there, and I closed the box and I put do not open until I forget when it is, like 2040 maybe or 2045. So it's this little open dime that nobody can corrupt it. It's going to be accessible in 20 years from now. So you don't need to like go through all the technical aspects of this. You can get an open dime. You can put a million sats, 10 million sats onto this thing and just lock it up in your own house. And then if you need to, the nice thing about that too is like if you ever needed it, you can just crack that box open and pay for whatever you need. But like the idea there, we used to do this when we were kids in elementary. You put like things from this time, you put it into a time capsule, you close it, and then you put a date in the future where you're supposed to open that. So I think that a really cool experiment for anybody who listens to this would be like get an open dime or get some sort of device, put like a million sats on it and say do not open until 2045, and just like I
Yeah,
would
that's
love
fire.
to see all the different reactions of video of people filming themselves opening that in 20 years from now. But like today, it's almost nothing. It's like I shouldn't say nothing. It's like $1,000 American, but like still very attainable, I think, for anybody.
Hmm. So 88 sets. What are you building?
So 88 Sats project, it's a golf and Bitcoin project. That's kind of what launched my channel. I just made it because I wanted to share some ideas on it. And the whole idea there was to get people thinking differently about Bitcoin in my own life. So my little brother and I have this golf company called King Golf, KNG Golf. We make like custom leather head covers and a few other things. But anyways, we had a decent following on Instagram. And I had this idea where if I could find 88 people to buy some Bitcoin. We put it into like a multi-sig fund and we sit on that Bitcoin for 10 years. We're going to be able to buy our own golf course. So this was like a crazy concept. And I kind of started talking about it. We had a podcast with the golf stuff. And I was like, I think we could do this. Like, I think we can find 88 people to contribute. So we did. And within a month or two, we sold all 88 shares of it. Everybody got the Bitcoin. I didn't just take cash and buy Bitcoin for people. I actually made people go through the process of buying it, sending it to us. And so it was pretty cool because like 90% of the people had never owned Bitcoin or heard about Bitcoin at all, but all of a sudden they kind of had some skin in the game. And so the idea there is that we have, I don't want to say the amount of Bitcoin that we have, but like we bought this in January 2023, January 3rd, 2023. So the price was like 20 grand. And so just after a couple years, like people are pumped. They're like, this thing's 5x. Like we have a realistic chance of actually owning our own golf course in like 5 years.
Nice.
So I just think that people, anybody hearing this, so you might be like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But I think people should actually apply that in their own life to whatever interest that they have. Like if they take that same kind of model, whether it's like a new gym or a skate park or a dojo or whatever, like apply that concept of gathering these funds together, having a long enough time horizon, and just, making sure that people are patient enough to see it through.
Well, I think that is the best use case that we can probably pitch to people right now, right? Like it's a superior savings technology. I think we mentioned that before, but like I think that's the most prevalent use case that we could focus on. And yes, you can still use it as cash, etc. I mean, we talked about that, but just that idea of not being able to save right now in fiat money, so everyone is forced to be an investor, where you know i- if you're a carpenter and you're out all day, building stuff, and you come home and you want to hang out in with your family, do you want to be on the Robinhood or in Discord or some fucking crypto
Exactly.
chat platform, whatever, to be an investor, or invest the money that you made that day? No one wants to do that. I think, well, if you like it, you could, but just the fact that people cannot save is, I think, very clear to a lot of people. Or the fact that they have to take more risk when they come back from their job or their venture, which is also taking risk, right? Just doing what you do. um, I think it's just a very clear use case that we probably should talk about more. But I think this is an example. Like, if you want to save, why do you save? You save money to spend it in the future on something that you find important, but or
Exactly.
to invest in yourself to do something bigger, or to create time and space to, I don't know, quit your job and start building a company, or whatever. But um, anything of value takes some time to build or to save for, right? And if you cannot do that anymore, then yeah, what are you striving for? Is that like then the rat race, right? Is that what people are stuck in? You're just trying to make ends meet, and then your future is next week or next month, or like what you think about, right? There's no long-term thinking anymore. And I think that's what Bitcoin brings back, right? Like your example is great, just getting people together, that have a certain interest and want to achieve something, and you can actually use a money technology that helps you get there.
I think if you just kind of like think about it through this lens, is like, let's say that I had this idea in the fiat world and Bitcoin didn't exist, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna find 88 people, I'm gonna gather up some, I'm gonna give a nice presentation, I'm gonna gather up some funds here. Okay, so I get $100 or $200 from every person. What do I have there? Like $16,000. Do you think do you think in 10 years from now, that $16,000 sitting in a savings account is going to buy us a golf course? It probably won't even buy us like a golf bag at that point. That's like the fiat world though. It's like everything is just declining, going nowhere. Where you if you store that exact same $16,000 in an asset like Bitcoin, where over time, because of the supply and demand, because of the supply, everything involved with Bitcoin, the way it works, we have a realistic chance of buying a golf course in 10 years. So those are like two completely different paths for people. Like 16 grand in a savings account, it might grow like $500 because of interest, but like, what are you going to be able to buy with that? Nothing.
Mm.
It's all about purchasing power. Where if you put that into Bitcoin and you have enough patience and a long enough time frame, that is eventually going to buy something substantial because of the dynamic, because of the hard money, because of the limited supply, because of the growing demand, because everything that's like not that complex to figure out, really. Like Bitcoin itself, the inner workings are pretty complex, but like the simple reasons of why this thing is only going to go up in purchasing power is pretty simple, I think, to understand.
Yeah. What's crazy? I talked with, who was it where we did this? I think it was an episode with Tom Karatza. He's from Canada too. He's into real estate. We talked about retirement, and I don't know the exact numbers, but yeah, like you said, let's say you have 16K, right, and you want to save 16K towards the future. Just having 16,000 units of a dollar, Canadian dollar, US dollar, euro, whatever, it does it, well, you can save it for 10 or 20 years, but you will be able to buy less with it, right? I mean, I think everyone understands that by now, because it gets debased. But we were talking about retirement, right? And so let's say you think about your retirement and you think like, oh well, um, in 30 years I'm going to retire, and then I'm still going to live for 20 years, of course, and then every year I want to go on this holiday that is like super luxurious holiday, like a 10K holiday, like crazy crazy luxury, right? Okay, so for these 20 years I need 200K to go on a holiday every year. So I want to save this to 200,000. But I think what a lot of people don't actually think about is the inflation or the debasement. So these 200,000 units, I think we calculated with like 7% a year over 30 years. Yeah, like you lose something like 66% or 70% of your purchasing power, something like that. I don't know. I'm butchering the numbers. Doesn't really matter. But the point is more that you will need 3 times as much units, money units, dollar units, to get to have that experience that you would like to have. And when we talked about that, I was like, damn, he's right. He's right. And, with money, and I wonder how you experience that. A lot of it is like on paper, it's like nominal, but it's not real. So same as with you know returns, GDP, growth, inflation, whatever. It's all nominal, and no one ever really talks about. But what's the real world effect of that? What's the tangible effect of that? Or maybe also the psychological effect of that, because we talked about that. Let's say you do everything right and you have an X amount of dollar units when you retire, you're still not going to be able to afford what you were dreaming about affording when you are actually retiring. And I feel that once you discover Bitcoin and you adopt it, you can actually get there. So your whole idea about the future is positive, and you're looking forward towards the future, actually, whereas a lot of people are really nihilistic about the future, right? Their future is like double uncertain than for um for other people. Does that make sense?
100%. And I love the fact that you use the word unit, because I think that that's how people should look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin seems like this abstract thing that not a whole lot of people understand. Then you get to sats. But if you get to if you think about trading your time and energy, whether you're working for somebody getting paid in Bitcoin, or whether you're converting your dollars into Bitcoin, or you're on Noster and somebody zaps you 10 sats, like if people looked at these things as units and understand that if you secure that unit properly, not only is nobody going to be able to take that from you, not only do you not have to ask anybody's permission on how to spend that, but that unit is only going to accrue more value over time. And nobody can print more of that. And everybody should just be focused on obtaining as many of these very scarce units as possible, because nobody can take that from you if you do it properly. And I mean, this is kind of what I wanted to mention before with you. When we were talking about like a medium of exchange, when we talked about the store of value, the other part of it too is nobody can take it from you. If you secure this thing properly, nobody can take this from you. Unlike land, like try, people will say, well, I have a piece of land in my hometown and, nobody can take that from me. It's mine. Well, stop paying your property taxes for a couple of years and see if you really own that land.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And gold would probably be the second thing, where people would say, well, I got gold coins in my house or in my top drawer or whatever. But somebody breaks in your house, they can get that gold quite easily. Bitcoin is the only asset that you can truly own, because if you do things properly in your security setup, you could have no trace of Bitcoin in your house and still have full access and sole access and ownership of that Bitcoin, which is
Mm-hmm.
like a very, very hard thing for most people to understand. But you could have zero trace of Bitcoin in your house if you do it properly. It could burn down. The government might show up, a $5 wrench attack, no trace of Bitcoin, while you still maintain full ownership of that Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's we just keep going back. Maybe that's a theme of this episode, is Bitcoin is just such a very big idea.
Yeah, I wrote down something before, something like hodling Bitcoin or understanding Bitcoin. It's simple, but it's not easy. Like it. th- I like that. Let's tie it back to the beginning, right, where you said it sounds too good to be true. Yes, yes. Bitcoin sounds way too good to be true, because it actually solves um, it solves all the problems that you are somewhat aware of, or when you explain it in a rational way, you're like, yeah, you're right. Just to add to your last example, actually, I use this example a lot. Is okay. Let's say you have land somewhere, and that is worth 1 million, right? And that land is in America, and you go to Europe, and you have to show that you're good for this land. What are you taking? The title deed? Are you going to take a piece of paper with some text and some random you know, autograph signature from a random notary in a random place in America, and you're going to be in France and be like, yeah, this Johnson sir has a signature on this title deed, and it's my. It makes no sense, you know. Or let's say the Russians really come. I used this example with someone who was really into stocks, and I said, okay, let's say the Russians come and we flee. What are you gonna be like when we're at some place and you want to buy like food and water? You're gonna be like, yeah, I'm good for it. Look at this is my stockbroker app, and I have like these stocks, and like together it's like this and this value. Like that is stupid. Like and now I think that's stupid. Maybe that's too harsh, but like it's abstract. You're abstracting the ownership of your wealth away to other people, other institutions, etc. Whereas with Bitcoin, as you just said, you can fully hold it in your custody. What I like, by the way, in English you have this word property, um, and in Dutch, I try to find the difference in words, but also in English to talk about it. But like property is something you really own. It's like on you, and like a title deed is like it's like a document for ownership. Does that make sense? Like there's a difference between having being the owner of something or having it as property. Does that make, maybe you
Yeah.
can correct me, but like once I understood that, I was like, yeah, Bitcoin is actually the only proper property, because everything else has an abstract way to show that you are the owner of XYZ. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like Bitcoin is the only asset that you can truly own.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
the only asset that you can truly own. And if you think about like your example there of showing your stocks to, to verify that you have this information, that's one thing to be like, first of all, nobody's really going to care about that. But the second thing is that, there you might have an Apple share there or a MicroStrategy share there,
Yeah, it's not
and
even
you have a
yours.
claim to it, but there's probably like 4 or 5 other people who also
Yes.
have a claim to
Yes.
that same share.
Yes. Yes. I know, but this is so accepted, you know.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
yes,
it's
you know,
normal.
it's
It's
so
just
accepted.
people.
But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. So what I wanted to illustrate is, okay, I'm going to show this app. This app has a centralized database on a Amazon server from this company, right? And I have a user account, and I just logged in, and you can see I have 1 million in blah 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 stock. So I can now buy this home from you in this new country because I fled my country. You know, I'm trying to paint a picture here, but that is stupid. And yes, you are right. Even if someone would say, "Oh, interesting, which stocks do you own?" You don't actually own them. So it's abstraction on abstraction on abstraction. And even if I would want to pay with my stocks for this home that I'm buying, I couldn't even do it. You know, it's like totally impossible. Or then I go to someone and get a loan for that home, and then I buy. Like it's just, it's too abstract. And once you realize that you are living on a layer of a layer of a layer of abstraction on a layer on, some database somewhere with code from the 1970s in your bank, and you then look at Bitcoin, then you think Bitcoin is too good to be true, because that it solves all these obvious flaws.
And I think that I love what you're talking about here in terms of like this abstract. I call it an illusion. That's because that's kind of
Mm.
what it is. Like it's just a big illusion, like from head to toe. But what another example that I like to share with people, as being like a former accountant in my past life, one of the things that I would do is like look at people's like a small business. I would look at their financial statements, And so their balance sheet, the first line, the most liquid asset on all these different businesses' balance sheet was cash. And I think that we've kind of like our opinion on cash has morphed into be like one thing. But I think if you think about like a company holding cash on their balance sheet, there's a difference between cash that you hold in your hand and there's difference between cash in a bank, because cash that you have in your hand, you can store that however you want to. You
Mm-hmm.
can spend that without anybody's permission. It has all these unique characteristics that the other form of cash doesn't have in the bank. If you have cash in the bank, that's essentially an IOU. The bank owes you money. You might not be able to access that. With cash in your hand, it is yours. You own it. And I think that that's the closest thing that we have right now to ownership. And that's why I use the gold as an example there. But like when we think about cash and gold kind of in the same way, it's the same thing. Even with cash, somebody breaks in your house, you have it under your mattress, gone. You want to flee your country, hop on an airplane, try taking $30,000 worth of that cash on an airplane.
Mm.
So it like has all these properties of like the best, store of value, medium of exchange, but it's just way better.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
so it
yeah.
just makes so much sense for me why people have a hard time understanding it, because it's like it basically takes everything we've ever learned and flips it on its head. That's what Bitcoin does.
Yeah. I'm thinking about how to wrap up best. We've been talking for 90 minutes almost. I always want to try to have that as kind of like the max length on YouTube, because I don't know if people are gonna watch 2 hours. But I wanted to. We touched upon, the hodling is simple, but it's not easy. And I remember this video where you shared something about, the long term conviction, or just the kind of like the mental and physical preparedness or the psychological resilience, now I remember, that you need to have when, um, well, you done the work, you understand this, you adopted it, you're trying to be, have it secure in your own possession, etc. Yeah, what are your thoughts about this psychological resilience? Like, how do you look at it? What's your time frame?
Well, I think that we're kind of in this very unique point in history right now in terms of like I think people should, as long there's a quote that says like as long as uneducated people are still willing to trade their Bitcoin for illusionary money that people can print, you should absolutely take that bet. And so that's kind of the opportunity that we have, is like most people don't understand what's happening yet. So we have the ability to accumulate a lot of this stuff right now. And it might not appear to be a lot right now, but when we look back in 20 or 30 years from now, it's going to be a very substantial amount. And so during this time, while people are still figuring out how valuable this thing is, these are the days when we need to be focused on like securing that Bitcoin, because it's very easy to buy Bitcoin. Very easy. You just send somebody some money, they say that you have Bitcoin, done. The hard part is protecting it and making sure that your family can access that in 50 or 100 years from now. And I think that a lot of people out there are really sleeping on that. They're watching the price, they're buying, which is good. They're obsessed with getting as much as they can of it, but they're missing the part where not only do you have to secure it today, but you have to secure it for 50, 100 years and make sure that your family can access that. I just think that for the majority of Bitcoiners right now, they say there's 4 or 5 million lost coins right now. I think it's probably like closer to 6, 7, and it's going to keep growing because everybody's procrastinating on this stuff in terms of like securing it properly, in terms of setting up a proper inheritance plan. It's boring stuff to talk about and to think about, but it's like absolutely necessary if you want this thing to be what it is for your family, right? For the generations to come. So I think that people have to be mentally ready for it in terms of like understanding it, that you need to do this physically, actually securing it, and then just being ready for like what's coming here, because we've American Hoddle was on your show a couple weeks ago, and I don't know if it was on your show or somebody else's, where he said like this thing realistically could get to $1 million this year or next year. And
Mm.
so if you're somebody out there right now who's holding like a Bitcoin, like one whole coin, and all of a sudden this thing goes to 1 million and then 2 million, like I just don't think people are psychologically ready to be a millionaire. You know, it's
Mm,
like when people win a lottery, I know it's a little bit different. It's not something that happens overnight, but I don't think it's gonna seem like it happened overnight. So like people who are millionaires right now to me don't really know that they're millionaires yet. And I don't think that they're preparing for it as if they are millionaires yet. And so kind of the way I explain it to people is like you have to protect your Bitcoin with bank level security. And if you compare you and your bank, you're holding Bitcoin, your bank's holding fiat. So three main differences, I think, when we compare the security here. The first one is that the bank, if they lose their money, if they lose people's money, they have insurance, so they can get that back quite easily. The second one is like the bank's holding other people's money, so they don't care as much as somebody who's holding their own money. But third is that they're actually protecting something that can be printed out of thin air. So, like, think about a bank and the security that they have there. Meanwhile, people are leaving like their ledgers or their devices like on their desk. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Do you not understand what that's worth?
mm,
So I think that people should be like thinking about this as bank level times, 100, because
yeah,
we're holding something that's real here. So I would implore people to kind of like think deeply about your threat models. And then for every threat model that you have in your life, because everybody's kind of different, but for every threat model that you have, make sure that you have a counter to that. And it's not something that's done in a week or a month or even a year, but like you should at least be thinking about this stuff and slowly making progress to, counteract every single attack vector that you have in your model.
yeah. Yeah, great advice. I also I don't know who said it, but yeah, you have to treat it like it's $1 million already, right? Is basically what you're saying. Yeah, I agree with that. That's great advice. I wanted to wrap up with two short questions. Maybe what you just said is already the answer to this one, but I was wondering, do you have like a spiky point of view on Bitcoin that not many people share with you, like a very um, contradicting take on Bitcoin?
Like controversial.
If you think it's controversial, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. And I don't know if it's controversial. It's just something that I kind of went through myself. So when you just talked about like holding $1 million worth of Bitcoin, right? Like on a device. That's how I see it. When I think about Bitcoin, I don't see it as $100,000. I see it as like $100 million. And I think that if people had like $100 million worth of cash sitting on a briefcase, they probably wouldn't leave it on their kitchen table. And so when you have these different devices, like a cold card here, and this one's kind of just a dummy, it's like almost just like a presentation thing here. But like the mistake that I made for a lot of years in Bitcoin is that I would keep this device, which is very secure, requires a PIN code to access. I would kind of leave this laying around my house with my 12 words underneath it, like my steel plate right underneath it. And I thought that was kind of the play. Like you put your device in the safe, you put your steel plate in the safe, it's fireproof, you want everything there. But the reality is that this thing could be as secure as, the most secure device that exists. But right underneath that, you have your 12 words or 24 words written in plain text. Where if somebody finds that right underneath this thing doesn't matter. They
Mm,
have your 12 words, they have your 24 words, they now have your Bitcoin. You're
yeah.
holding that in plain text. So that's kind of my take, is that I just think that a lot of people, a lot of Bitcoiners aren't thinking through what could happen here and how much of a risk it is for people to leave their Bitcoin, their $100 million worth of wealth sitting around on 24 words in plain text that somebody could just like walk away with, entered into a computer, send it, everything you ever worked for is gone.
Mm,
But nobody said, like, the thing about being 16 years into this thing is like there's no courses in school, we're just kind of like figuring all this out together at the same time, which is wild.
yeah.
But like that was the biggest thing for me that I really like. I think that people need to pay more attention to like how they're backing up their recovery phrase.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this again great advice. I'm thinking about also something to realize is that a wallet is not a wallet, like it's not in the wallet. It's like the hardware wallet or the cold card that you showed. Like it's a device, it's a viewer for the wallet. It's like an interactor for the wallet, right? But the Bitcoin doesn't exist on the
Right.
wallet. So
I've been calling them signing devices. That
Exactly,
so
that's
whether it's
better.
like a
Yeah, that's
whether it's
better.
like a cold card, whether you have like a Aqua wallet on your phone, if you had an Aqua wallet on your phone would be your signing device. If you had
Exactly.
a Sparrow wallet, like a hot wallet on your laptop is the sign device because you have to sign that transaction. You have to be the one to do it if you want to move
Yes.
Bitcoin.
Yeah,
So you don't
exactly.
own the Bitcoin, you own the keys to move that Bitcoin, which essentially you own the Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody else comes across that private key, your key, they now own your Bitcoin.
Yeah. All right. Last question, and I ask everyone the same question, and I think you know the question. Um, but it's what is a core belief that you will never let go?
Dogs are better than people. No, I don't want to go on record as that. I love people. I think the thing that I would say to that is we're never going to fully evolve as a species until we have a monetary system like Bitcoin. It doesn't matter who the president is, it doesn't matter how good people's intentions are, unless we have an asset like Bitcoin that is truly decentralized, not just a name, but like truly decentralized, we will never be able to evolve as humans. And so it's extremely exciting to me. People are going to call us lucky, and we kind of are. We're lucky that we're born at this time because somebody who was born 100 years ago, they never got to live through what we're about to live through. People who are born 100 years from now, they're going to give anything to be where we are right now in terms of being able to get these very fine, scarce units uh, for illusionary paper money. So I'm very excited. Obviously, you can tell. I just love talking about this stuff. And I'm very appreciative of our chat today, Bram, and everything that you're doing in the space. You're doing some really good things. So I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you too. I think what is so great about Bitcoin is that if I talk about it, I help you, and if you talk about it, you help me. You know, I think that
Exactly.
yeah, I love that. I love that about Bitcoin. So yeah, I appreciate your time. I want to thank you for coming on, for trying out this the live stream with me as well, and for the people that are still watching. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let us know what you think of it by commenting. I don't know if you can comment later on. I don't even know how that works on YouTube, or send us stuff on Twitter. But yeah, Jor, thanks again, and let's stay in touch. Cheers, man.
All right. Thanks, Bram.
Thank you. That was long, but it went quicker than I thought.
Holy, there's 305